Hello and welcome back to the MILELE readings. We are on chapter 33, but we'll be doing 33 and 34 as they are not as long as our usual chapters. Let's recap 32. So in chapter 32, Nathan and Faith are returning to Eden 2. And of course, the mist has really dispersed, which is allowed for the internet connecting across the world, which is a good thing, but not so good for the loyals because it means the Council of Nations and Keiko will have a greater grip on the world, which is not good news for the loyals. Also, Nathan and Faith's relationship is more stable, if you want to say it that way. It's kind of unspoken, but the conflicts are not there. Also, the big news, of course, is that the Council of Nations have taken baby Moses. And the person who abducted baby Moses was Wuhan Batten. And of course, this has rocked the Eden 2, has rocked Hope's world because she's also not only faced with baby Moses' abduction, and that now she does have to go with Keiko because she needs to rescue her baby, but also with the knowledge that the sovereigns allowed Vohand on Eden 2 in the first place. And so this has really upset her. She's being very human about it, but Faith, or Ruth, of course, has reminded her that, yes, the sovereigns sometimes make decisions we don't understand, but it would always be for the good of humanity. So we'll wait and see what comes out of all of this. All right, so let's move on to 33. Okay, so the mist is pretty much gone in this scene on the Mediterranean Sea. Stars. It seemed so long ago since Nathan had such a clear view of them. Now there they were, twinkling down at the world. The sound of waves churning against the merchant ship as he rested his elbows on its rail added to the mystique of the night. The ship, for the most part, had ridden steadily and uneventfully across the sea. Who would have thought the mist's disappearance from the world would leave him with ambiguous feelings? Freedom from its impediment versus protection from its covering. How could its rapid disappearance be explained any more than its sudden arrival? How could anyone explain its cocooning warmth even as it hindered the sun's rays? The sovereigns had not explained it, and humans had failed to decode its composition. A light fragrance filtered into his pondering. Faith had come and was leaning with her back to the rail beside him. She gave him an easy smile. It was evident that their feelings for each other had deepened during the voyage, but outwardly they remained in companionable friendship. Knowing better how she felt, Nathan was now less frustrated with this unavoidable threshold in their relationship. In fact, their silent agreement made it so that, except for their sleeping quarters, they were always together. They helped the crew when needed, stayed out of the way when not needed, and with communication now more prevalent, Nathan's work as underground Israeli loyal consultant became a large part of their daily routine. Looking up at the sky, Faith asked, "Are those really stars?" Before he could answer, she looked at Nathan and asked, "Is he really dead?" "It does seem too good to be true," Nathan said, "but I trust the captain's verification of the news. But how can we be certain? There's also no news on how he was killed." The news of Keiko Bay's assassination, Nathan was sure, had left the world in shock. the mist lifting, the world envoy's death. It seemed too all-encompassing. Working so many years with him, I have mixed feelings hearing about his death. Nathan rubbed his eyes, still gritty from lack of sleep. As I told you before, we had a good relationship for the most part until Mendax Nabian. But honestly, Mendax was just the beginning. Scarlet Babylon? Not even her. He leaned sideways against the rail and faced her. Those two helped initiate the change in him, but his bodyguard had a greater impact. Tsabe? Yes. The world only knows that Tsabe saved Keiko's life just before his appointment as world envoy, and then became his main security afterward. But no one really knows much about him. Faith sighed. Extremely creepy is the word, but you and I know why, considering we know who he really is. Or who controls him, Nathan said. Tsabe on the surface seems to embrace the role of bodyguard with no interference in politics. Apparently, he has a striking resemblance to a deceased Russian military commander. But as far as it's known, that man was a casualty of the asteroid. However, it's most definite that after Tsabe entered Keiko's life, there was a marked increase in Keiko's thirst for power. That thirst not only triggered a rift in his and my relationship, but also with some of his closest friends and colleagues. Mendax, of course, had no problems welcoming Tsabe into the fold. You mean the self-proclaimed prophet? Self-proclaimed or not, he has a considerable following. The fact that he wants to unite the world's major religions is very popular. The fact he doesn't hide his antagonism for Prince Adani and the loyals created a divide. As you know, true loyals consider loyalty to Prince Adani above religion. Scarlet Babylon completes the circle. I find her more objectionable, Faith said, grimacing. I'm surprised her relationship with the world envoy only focused on business. No surprise there, Nathan said. It's not from her lack of trying to have the relationship otherwise. If she had a religion, it would be love of self. She's all about fulfilling one's self in pursuit of pleasure. But for Keiko Bays, for as long as I've known him, there has only ever been one dominant goal on his mind: becoming king of the world. Now you finally see how it's playing out. Nathan smiled at her "I told you so" attitude. The underground Israeli loyals is right, he said. At first, no one in Keiko's circle took it seriously, including myself, but apparently the seed started germinating when he was about 12. Excuse me. That I didn't know, Faith said. Nathan continued. The story of his biological father being unknown is true. Even though his maternal family is unbelievably wealthy and he's lauded as their only heir, I think his need for control and security started in childhood. Mendax Nabian and Ms. Babylon jumped on the bandwagon, supporting him with their influence and fortune. Then, of course, the world fell into chaos after the asteroid, providing a ripe environment for a world ruler, Faith said. Exactly. Of course, the only thing standing in his way is the promised return of Prince Adani. How do you compete with a prince who claims to be the son of sovereign emperor, who built the known and unknown worlds and ordained all life? Let's walk, Faith said, moving away from the rail. Nathan followed her. While you lived in Israel, Faith began, you must have heard the rumor that some believe Keiko Bays to be the true son of the sovereign emperor. I've heard. Nathan knew that thought had become more prevalent, and it greatly disturbed him. It was the same mindset that had rejected Prince Adani as sovereign prince. and he knew who was behind it. He was certain it was the same power that worked in Mendax Nabian and Scarlet Babylon, the same power he sensed in Tsabe, a power that was greedy for everything that belonged to Prince Adani, the Vouchkis. It's nonsense, of course, Faith said, and then she suddenly stopped walking. She pointed at the sky. Look! Nathan looked up. He said, the Sky Kingdom. We can see it again, Faith said. Her laughter followed, ringing through the night, carefree and melodious like a child. A new scene. A couple of hours later, just after retiring to his cabin, Nathan opened his door to one of the ship's officers. The man's face, weathered and aged with wisdom, was etched with concern. Mr. Kanisa, please come with me. Moments later, in one corner of the ship's command center, listening through a satellite phone, it didn't take long for Nathan to understand the concern on the officer's face. It was also reflected in the captain's face. The fresh news from one of their hidden sources was enough to sink the ship. Before traveling the dimly lit passageway back to his room, Nathan had already decided he would withhold the news from Faith, at least until after breakfast. Now, sitting on the side of his rumpled bed, he struggled to triune connect. Indeed, his heart was heavy, and he needed strength outside of his own. Why do you worry so? Have I not reminded you these things would happen? Is it so hard? It was Agios's voice. With eyes closed, Nathan groaned. It is hard, he said out loud. This will be too much for my sister. He looked up, knowing he would see no one, as he would have on Eden too. It will crush her. It will also be hard to tell Faith. They are stronger than you think. They will know, as you should also know, that this is the beginning of the end. Be encouraged, dear one. These things must happen for the end to come. He knew, of course, for the end to come, Prince Adani would first rescue his followers, then curtail his enemies, and return to rule the world. Then finally, the sovereign emperor would command the destruction of every enemy, and everything would be made new before the descent of the Sky Kingdom. But to endure until the end, Nathan started saying. The bride will endure. If she endures, you will all endure. With his head bowed, he waited, knowing there would be more. But, dear one, you will come with me earlier. Earlier? Nathan's heart tightened. Earlier. Somehow he'd known it would come to this. From the time he decided to leave the side of the most powerful man on earth, he had known. He exhaled. That's a sobering moment. You can take that to understand it how you understand, but we'll know for sure soon. New scene. They'd finished breakfast and were sitting at a table in the small stateroom used as his and Faith's common room when Nathan told Faith the news. Her eagerness to finally surf the internet using the laptop on the table was quickly forgotten. What will happen to your sister? She asked, looking distressed. Nathan took a deep breath. He'd asked himself the same question many times throughout the sleepless night. Keiko Bays was very much alive, and even more powerful. And somehow, the three opposing Council of Nations members, had disappeared, with no word of explanation about their whereabouts. Why couldn't he have stayed dead? Faith mumbled under her breath. Nathan instinctively reached for her hand closest to him, pulling it from the laptop to cradle it in his own hands. Look at me, he said. She did, glaring as if he were the object of her ire. She's not alone, he said. She has faithful friends, and Governor Peter, Colonel Davenport, and she has Agios. And Agios will do the will of Jennies, of Prince Adoni, of the sovereign emperor. Her eyes softened. I wish I were also there to help her, even though I've never met her. You'll meet her, and you will like her, even though she can't beat up grown men like you can. Faith pulled her hand away. Nathan laughed softly, then repossessed the hand. But she has the same heart of compassion and is strong in her commitments, like you. Smiling mischievously, Faith retorted, I don't care that I'm not a princess. Are you not? He asked gently. I like that you're my beautiful warrior princess. His heart overflowed with love for her. Even so, he released her hand. How much longer did he have with her? During the night, they'd sailed through the Straits of Gibraltar onto the Atlantic Ocean. What would they face? Faith's sentiment was right. A dead world envoy would have made approaching the waters of Eden 2 less problematic than a living, newly appointed world chancellor. The latter was most likely now soaring through the clear skies of a world no longer covered by the mist, to a small, mysterious island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, I had said I was going to do 34, but I digress. I'm going to do 34 separately because it's a very special chapter. Okay, so I will say here, take care and come back for chapter 34. Bye-bye.